On a fateful day, June 10, 2012, the Arlington Emergency Police Response Team in Tarrant County, Texas, received a call requesting a check on apartment 3600 on Waverly Drive, just north of the Parks Mall. This was the residence of an elderly Vietnamese-American couple, Hoang Le, 63, and Long Nguyen, 72, owners of a tailor shop in the area. Upon entering the apartment, investigators were immediately stunned by the chaotic scene before them. Evidence of a violent struggle was everywhere. From the entrance, along the walls, on the floor, in the bedroom, and into the closet area. In a small corner of the bedroom closet, they discovered the bodies of Hoang and Long, tightly bound with duct tape. Strangely, amid the disarray of the crime scene, there were signs of a celebration. A half-smoked marijuana joint lay on the table, next to a beer bottle carefully wrapped in a blue bandana, as if the perpetrator had casually celebrated right at the scene of the crime. Investigators initially suspected this was a gang-related incident, theorizing that the attack began as soon as the victims opened their door. However, when they compared DNA samples collected at the scene with the federal criminal database, they found no matches. The autopsy report revealed that both victims had suffered blunt force trauma injuries, but the exact cause of death was asphyxiation, a result of being gagged with duct tape. Behind this tragic case was the story of two immigrants who had tried to build a new life in America. Long Nguyen and Hoang Le arrived in the United States in 2000 with dreams of a fresh start. They had a married daughter. In 2008, the family moved to Arlington, Texas, home to a vibrant Vietnamese community that had been growing since the 1970s. There, the couple found not just a new home, but also cultural and spiritual connections with a long-established community of their compatriots. The couple owned a commercial tailoring business represented by their son-in-law, Chau Tran, who served as the business representative because he had the best English skills. Over the next 10 years, Long Nguyen and Hoang Le's tailoring business flourished, reaching its peak when they secured a contract with Disney. However, by 2011, business had slowed and was becoming increasingly difficult. According to Chau Tran, who called the police the night before the murder, the whole family had gathered to celebrate his father-in-law Long Nguyen's birthday. The family party was warm and intimate, and the elderly couple stayed until 10:30 p.m. before a family member drove them home. Danny Tran, Chau's son, also confirmed that his grandparents had visited their Arlington home on June 9, 2012, to attend the birthday party and only left after dinner ended. The tragedy began to unfold the next morning, June 10th, when Danny's paternal grandmother, who lived in the same apartment complex as Long and Hoang, noticed something unusual. A window screen at the couple's apartment had been moved from its normal position. Concerned, she called Chau Tran. Immediately, Chau and several family members rushed to the apartment complex to check on the situation. Upon noticing suspicious signs, Chau's father decided to call 911. After conducting a search, police had to deliver the terrible news to the family. Long and Hoang had been murdered. The 911 emergency call recording from 7:30 a.m. on June 10, 2012, captured Chau Tran's panicked voice. In an emotional, broken voice, he exclaimed to the dispatcher, "Oh my God, Ma'am, my son and my wife, they say they looked in there. They see everything falling down." During the investigation, a notable detail emerged. Long Nguyen and Hoang Le had purchased a life insurance policy worth $1 million, and Chau Tran, their son-in-law, was one of the primary beneficiaries. This immediately raised questions about Chau's possible involvement in the murders. Detectives thoroughly interrogated many family members, but found no evidence suggesting that any of them, including Chau Tran, were present at the crime scene when the murders occurred. To ensure objectivity, police conducted a second interrogation of Chau Tran on June 13th. He continued to fully cooperate with investigators. With alibis confirmed by several family members, investigators temporarily dismissed their suspicions about the son-in-law. The case remained unsolved for years until an unexpected breakthrough occurred. A clue from another case, On October 12, 2015, after 3.5 years of deadlock since the tragic Arlington case that took the lives of the Vietnamese couple Long Nguyen and Hoang Le, investigators finally had a decisive breakthrough. On that day, the forensics laboratory confirmed that DNA samples from the marijuana joint at the crime scene matched Willie Guiori, a 20-year-old who had recently been arrested for violating parole terms for horse theft. Now, instead of facing a minor charge, Willie was confronted with a charge of premeditated murder, a crime that could lead to the death penalty. When brought to Arlington for questioning, Willie initially chose to remain silent. However, facing the prospect of a severe sentence, he decided to cooperate with investigators in exchange for the possibility of a reduced sentence. Willie's testimony became the key piece of the entire case. A notable detail was that at the time of the crime, Willie was just a 16-year-old teenager with no serious criminal record, so his DNA was not in the federal CODIS database. Willie lived in Houston under the guardianship of his uncle, Bobby James Guillory, 49, who had adopted him at a young age. In his testimony, Willie revealed that he had endured years of both physical and emotional abuse from this uncle. His difficult family circumstances had seriously affected his education, forcing him to enroll in special education programs at Cypress Springs High School. On the night of June 9, 2012, Uncle Bobby took Willie with him on a 3-hour drive from Houston to Arlington. Willie testified that he and Bobby broke into Long Nguyen and Hoang Le's apartment twice, using keys that Bobby had obtained. When they first entered the apartment, no one was home, and they ransacked the place looking for valuables, including a gold necklace and 3 Louis Vuitton wallets. Bobby then carefully removed light bulbs from their sockets, and the two waited in the darkness to stage a fake crime scene. They set up the apartment with a marijuana joint and wrapped a bandana around a beer bottle, intending to mislead investigators into thinking a gang might have been partying there. But Willie inadvertently left his DNA on the marijuana joint at his uncle's direction. After 2 tense hours of waiting in the darkness of the apartment, Bobby received word that Nguyen and Lai were on their way home. When the elderly couple just stepped through the front door, the two killers rushed out from the kitchen, attacking them with a homemade baseball bat that Willie had crafted in his woodworking class at school. Despite their age, the couple tried to fight back vigorously. Hoang Le's cries for help in Vietnamese echoed through the apartment until she was exhausted and passed out. After completing their brutal act, Bobby and Willie dragged the bodies of Long and Hoang into the bedroom, bound them tightly with duct tape, and stuffed them into the closet to hide them. The next morning, conscious of removing evidence, they burned all the clothes they had worn on that fateful night. Faced with these horrifying confessions, Willie was charged with first-degree murder, a crime that could cost him his life. Bobby, the uncle identified as the mastermind, was also arrested and charged with 2 extremely serious counts. However, this was just the tip of the iceberg. The case still concealed darker secrets waiting to be revealed. In Willie's testimony, a mysterious figure gradually emerged as the central piece of the crime puzzle: Daphne Nguyen Wright, a 47-year-old woman from Houston. Not just an ordinary individual, Daphne claimed to be a master of magic with supernatural abilities, specializing in casting spells and removing curses. In Vietnamese community media, she advertised extensively about her extraordinary abilities. She could both break existing curses and create new ones targeting her clients' enemies. Daphne had built an entire brand called DMC Spiritual Healing and Guidance, which was publicly advertised in a popular Vietnamese newspaper in the community. Her services promised mysterious magic and voodoo rituals that could transform the fate of those willing to pay. When the case was reported in American media, Daphne was often described as a self-proclaimed witch, a title her legal team strongly objected to. Weston, Daphne's attorney in Fort Worth, argued that this was an unfortunate misunderstanding about the nature of his client's work. Rather than a witch, he described Daphne as a professional spiritual advisor serving the Asian community in Texas. According to the attorney's defense, Daphne was actually meeting specific cultural needs within the Asian community in the Lone Star State. Her clients, mostly people of Asian descent, sought out this fortune teller for spiritual guidance and supernatural advice, They believed that through Daphne's rituals and advice, they could improve their luck, find true love, or change their lives in a more positive direction. According to Willie's testimony, he met Daphne through his uncle Bobby. Once when he was at her house, Willie overheard her talking on the phone with someone with a very soft voice. Daphne and this person were discussing wanting to settle scores with two people who owed them money, and if they didn't pay, she wanted them to die so she could collect insurance money. Willie testified that Bobby was in the room with Daphne during this phone conversation. Willie had heard Bobby and the witch discuss dealing with debtors on several other occasions. Daphne told Bobby that she wanted them to pay or they would die. In deeper testimonies, Willie described his complex relationship with Daphne. Contrary to the violent character she displayed in the case, Daphne treated Willie almost like a mother, something that this emotionally deprived young man rarely experienced. Notably, Daphne had once opposed bringing Willie into the criminal conspiracy, arguing that the young man was too young and too slow to participate in the dangerous plan. However, Bobby, the uncle who disregarded her advice, still brought Willie along because there was no one else to help execute the plan. Willie also revealed more about his uncle's deceptive character. Bobby often impersonated military personnel, wearing uniforms to impress women and enjoy discounts at restaurants. The network of relationships became even more tangled when Willie testified that at the time of the crime, Bobby was having an affair with Vi Nguyen, a friend who lived with Daphne. This illicit relationship was why Willie had visited Daphne's house with Bobby multiple times. When confronted by investigators, Bobby revealed the financial motive behind the murder. Daphne had offered to pay him $10,000 to collect the enormous debt of $280,000 that the victim couple owed. However, the initial plan transformed into a sinister conspiracy when Daphne discovered Long and Huang's $1 million life insurance policy. From a simple debt collection, the plan quickly shifted to a premeditated homicide to profit from the insurance money. 4 years after the crime, when Bobby had been arrested, police finally had enough evidence to request a search warrant for Daphne's home in Houston. The search yielded important discoveries, a meticulously kept ledger, essentially a complete client list of her spiritual services. This book contained detailed information about a series of clients, names, addresses, dates of birth, including Bobby and Vi Nguyen, his lover. The financial records in the book revealed Daphne's staggering price list, from $10,000 to $40,000 for her spiritual services, figures far exceeding what a typical spiritual advisor might charge. The search also uncovered a treasure trove of suspicious evidence. Copies of Bobby's personal documents, including driver's license and gun permit, along with a large amount of credit cards and cash, signs of a non-transparent business operation. But what stunned investigators most was an unexpected discovery in the client book. Clearly appearing in the list was the name of Chau Tran, the son-in-law of the murdered couple from 4 years earlier. The address recorded next to Chau's name wasn't his current address, but where he had lived 4 to 5 years before the crime occurred, proving their relationship had existed for a long time. Investigators also discovered a particularly suspicious detail. On the same page of the book, Chau Tran's name and image were placed next to Bobby's name, accompanied by mysterious symbols, as if these two were linked in a complex relationship that no one had previously suspected. The final piece of the crime puzzle was gradually emerging. A detective named Stewart went to Houston to interview Daphne Wright. In a recorded conversation, she denied knowing anyone named Bobby, but she knew a man named James, which was actually another name for Bobby. He told her he was a colonel in the military and was working at Port Hood. Daphne said she would be angry if someone named Bobby was accusing her of something, and expressed her intention to go to Port Hood to talk to the man named James to find out what was going on. Daphne also admitted knowing Chau Tran, a former client she met in 2005 or 2006, and the last time she spoke with him was when he experienced a family tragedy. Chau Tran hired her to perform rituals to help the family business. Daphne claimed that Chau Tran currently did not owe her any money, and she usually charged up front. When the detective asked, "What would happen if he didn't pay you?" Daphne replied, "I wouldn't even know what would happen, but usually it wouldn't be good. I don't have to do anything to them. Things just naturally happen." Detective Stewart, who investigated the case in Arlington, said he had interrogated Chau Tran and other family members at the time of the 2012 murder. Initially, Chau Tran cooperated with investigators, but he didn't provide police with any information or clues about who might be the killers. Stewart initially didn't suspect Chau Tran of being involved in the crime, but after police interrogated Daphne, he stopped cooperating with police. When arrest warrants were issued for Willie Guiori, Bobby James Guiori, and Daphne Nguyen Wright, the criminal network began to collapse. Faced with legal pressure and the risk of being prosecuted with the most serious charge, Chau Tran, who had previously been cleared of suspicion, had no way out. Faced with irrefutable reality, he agreed to fully cooperate with investigators in exchange for immunity from prosecution. In his testimony, Chau Tran unveiled the secret about his relationship with Daphne. According to him, everything began when he and his mother-in-law, Huang Li, accidentally discovered an advertisement in the newspaper for Daphne, introducing her ability to use magic and voodoo to improve business fortune. At that time, the family's tailoring business was struggling, and both Chau Tran and Mrs. Lai believed that the decline might be due to some curse. With blind faith in supernatural abilities, they sought out Daphne, paying large sums for her to perform rituals to remove curses and help the tailoring shop recover. In the next part of his testimony, Chau Tran described in detail his financial relationship with Daphne. According to him, the family had used company credit cards and cash to pay for Daphne's spiritual services for many months. But notably, despite paying generously, their business not only failed to improve, but continued to decline rapidly. Instead of stopping the services, they became even more deeply entangled when they switched to a payment plan, a disastrous decision that led to the enormous debt of $280,000 by 2012. This amount accumulated gradually over many years for services that Daphne claimed to have provided, despite yielding no results. The story became even more frightening when Chau Tran revealed a shocking detail. Realizing he couldn't pay the huge debt, Huang Li herself, his mother-in-law, had proposed an extreme solution: to let her die so we could use the insurance money to pay the witch. Chau Tran testified that the entire family was terrified of owing money to Daphne, whom they believed had supernatural abilities that could harm them. He claimed that Huang herself had actively conceived the idea of sacrificing herself so that the $1 million life insurance policy could resolve the huge debt weighing on the family. Continuing in his testimony, Chau Tran admitted discussing his mother-in-law's life insurance policy with Daphne. A frightening turning point occurred when Daphne introduced a dark plan, telling Chau Tran bluntly, "Let her die and then we can get the money." She confidently claimed to know someone in the military, referring to Bobby, who was impersonating military personnel, who would do this if paid a certain commission. According to Chau Tran, the two discussed this murder plan during many meetings. Notably, it was Daphne who expanded the scope of the plan, deciding that not only Huang Li, but also Long Nguyen had to be eliminated because they lived together, a cruel decision that led to the death of both spouses. Although Chau Tran confirmed meeting Bobby many times at Daphne's house, he insisted that he had never directly communicated with Bobby beyond polite greetings. According to his testimony, on the fateful day of June 9, 2012, the family held a birthday party for the victims at Chau Tran's home. As soon as the elderly couple left, Chau called Daphne to inform her, using a prepaid mobile phone with a SIM card that couldn't be traced, a detail showing careful calculation in the criminal conspiracy. In the most important part of his testimony, Chau Tran admitted revealing to Daphne the location of the spare key to the apartment, crucial information that Daphne passed to Bobby and Willie so they could easily break into the victim's home. In a cold tone, Chau testified that he was fully aware his in-laws would be murdered when they returned home after the birthday party, though he claimed not to know exactly how the killers would carry it out. To further verify the connection between Chau Tran and Daphne, police also interrogated Danny Tran, Chau Tran's son. Danny confirmed that he recognized Daphne and was well aware of her relationship with his father. According to Danny, Chau Tran and Daphne had some kind of business relationship, although he wasn't clear about the exact nature of this relationship. Danny revealed that before his grandparents were murdered, He had accompanied his father to visit Daphne's house in Houston several times. Chau Tran also described his deep impressions of Daphne's house, where he clearly noticed signs of voodoo, an ancient belief system with African origins, famous for using charms, spells, and dolls to create connections between the visible world and the supernatural realm. Daphne's house was filled with mysterious artifacts, charms, idols, and other ritual items, all creating a space full of mysticism and mystery. Danny also revealed that his father, Chau Tran, was very superstitious and had strong belief in the supernatural powers of voodoo. After the bloody crime occurred on the night of June 9, 2012, taking the lives of Long and Huang, the dark financial plan had accomplished its goal. Chau Tran and his wife received the huge insurance payment as expected. Without wasting time, he immediately arranged a trip to Houston to pay off the debt to Daphne, who had designed this entire murder plot. Due to bank restrictions on cash withdrawals, Chau couldn't withdraw the entire $280,000 at once. Instead, he had to make multiple smaller withdrawals, each around $50,000, from different bank branches until he collected the necessary amount to pay Daphne. Explaining his initial silence, Chau Tran confessed to lying to police during his first interrogations after the murder. His reason reflected blind faith in Daphne's supernatural abilities. He feared that if he revealed the truth, he would be punished by Daphne's magic. He even described feeling that Daphne was controlling his mind, an indication of the profound psychological influence that Daphne had planted in the minds of her clients. After reviewing all evidence and testimony, the Tarrant County grand jury reached a verdict. Daphne Wright, 47, was guilty of the charge of premeditated murder in the elaborately staged case that caused the deaths of Long Nguyen and Huang Li in Arlington in 2012. Despite facing serious charges, Daphne steadfastly denied all allegations, claiming the entire case was based solely on the testimony of two accomplices, lacking direct physical evidence linking her to the crime scene. Daphne's team of 5 defense attorneys strongly argued that there was no evidence proving their client was present at the scene. They even boldly shifted suspicion toward Chau Tran, who had been granted immunity in exchange for cooperation. The lawyers emphasized that Chau Tran was the one who directly benefited from the insurance policy, and even suggested that Huang Li herself, Chau's mother-in-law, might have participated in this tragic plan with the purpose of resolving debt and saving the family business that was on the verge of bankruptcy. Beyond potentially questionable testimonies, the prosecutor presented a series of undeniable phone evidence, important physical pieces in the crime picture. Investigator Brown from the district attorney's office presented detailed information to the court about the complex communication network between the 3 main figures, Daphne Wright, Chau Tran, and Bobby Galori, during the time of the crime. In a tireless effort, Brown identified and collected data from 10 different phone numbers based on information from various sources, from witness interviews, Willie's school records, to suspicious financial transactions. He acknowledged that the evidence-gathering process faced many difficulties due to the significant time gap. 4 years had passed from when the crime occurred until investigators began to uncover this communication network. Detailed call records revealed suspicious contact patterns. Particularly important were calls on June 9, 2012, the day of the murder. Records showed Daphne made multiple contacts with a phone number in Arlington around 5 p.m. and then again at 9 p.m. The timing of these calls perfectly matched the time needed to travel from Houston to the Arlington area, about 4 hours by car, a detail that further strengthened the connection between Daphne and the timing of the crime. The call records revealed another notable detail. On the morning of June 10th, when the crime was discovered, Chau Tran contacted Daphne at least twice. Their calls continued throughout the day, parallel to a series of contacts between Daphne and Bobby in the following days, as if they were coordinating post-event actions to ensure all their stories were consistent. Investigator Brown also discovered another suspicious sign in the contact pattern: the sudden absence of communication between 2 people who regularly contacted each other daily before the crime. However, on the exact day of the murder, no calls between them were recorded. Brown argued that this unusual interruption could be a sign that the suspects had switched to using other phone numbers, possibly untraceable prepaid phones, to communicate during the critical period. Another mystery was revealed through phone records. Around the time of the crime, an unidentified phone number ending in 2160000 made multiple calls to the victim's family business line. Financial evidence revealed the motive for the crime. Forensic accountants provided important evidence about suspicious financial transactions of the tailoring business related to the murder case of the Vietnamese couple in Arlington. In his testimony, the forensic accountant pointed out that this business had recorded minimal income from customers in the months before the murder, while most expenditures were transferred to life insurance premiums. Besides phone evidence, the forensic accounting expert presented notable financial findings related to Bobby Guillory. After the crime, Bobby suddenly made 2 large vehicle purchases, paying cash up front, with a total value of up to $53,000. The timing of the purchases made investigators particularly suspicious. The first was bought just 1 month after Chau Tran received insurance money from his in-laws' deaths, the second 5 months later. When analyzing the cash flow in Bobby's accounts, the forensic accounting expert concluded that he had absolutely no legitimate source of income sufficient to support these large transactions. Bank records also indicated that Bobby did not have the financial capacity to maintain monthly installment payments for these vehicles, a clear sign that the cash used to purchase these cars came from an illegitimate source. After comprehensive consideration of the evidence, far beyond the testimonies of accomplices, the court concluded beyond doubt about Daphne Wright's central role in the murder. The verdict emphasized that Daphne was not only the planner and encourager of the crime, but also played a key role as a coordinating bridge between 2 main figures: Bobby Guillory, the one who directly carried out the killings, and Chau Tran, the beneficiary of the huge insurance payout after his in-laws' deaths. At Daphne Wright's office, investigators collected a treasure trove of decisive physical evidence, various drawings, images, and documents establishing an undeniable connection between Bobby Guillory and Chau Tran. These artifacts, combined with detailed records of phone calls between Daphne and her 2 accomplices during the critical moments of the crime, formed a network of evidence impossible to deny about the witch's mastermind role in the entire conspiracy. Justice was finally served in September 2018, when Bobby James Guillory was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, the harshest verdict short of the death penalty. A year later, in September 2019, Daphne Wright, the 47-year-old woman who had exploited blind faith and supernatural abilities to manipulate her victims, faced a similar verdict: life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for murder and incitement to murder. Willie Guillory, the youngest in the criminal group and also the one who revealed the entire conspiracy, received a reduced sentence after pleading guilty to armed robbery. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison, but will have the opportunity for parole in 2025, when he will be just 29 years old, with his whole life ahead to rebuild. Not accepting the verdict, Daphne Wright filed an appeal to the Supreme Court. However, on May 31, 2023, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to review her appeal, officially closing the tragic case that authorities described as truly being an insurance fraud disguised with spiritual, mystical elements. The Supreme Court made no specific comment when rejecting the appeal. The tragedy of Long Nguyen and Huang Li's family is not just a story about a cruel insurance fraud, but also a lesson about the danger of blind faith in supernatural promises. In the hidden corners of immigrant communities, where people still seek connections with traditional cultural values, individuals like Daphne exploited fear, superstition, and desperation to manipulate victims into dark conspiracies. The case has ended, but the lessons from it will echo for a long time, as a warning about the dangers when the boundary between faith and illusion is blurred, when the value of human life is converted into cold numbers in insurance contracts. And that is today's case. Thank you for watching and see you in the next videos.